Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be discussing why and how and what large format 4x5 photography is. There's a whole big range of reasons why I shoot and sometimes don't shoot 4x5 large format photography. This video will basically give off a list of reasons and explain the process of 4x5 photography and my workflow. 4x5 photography isn't for everyone. I'll just use that as a starter point. It's a very technical and very hands-on kind of approach to photography. This video will hopefully list out a few reasons and show you if it may be useful or not for you in your workflow. I just wanted to mention as well that videos will now be coming out every fortnight. So I previously did weekly videos, but it's just proven too much for me. I'm currently studying a Master of Arts in Photography, and it's just all too much for me trying to pump out a video every week. So I'd rather really focus on quality as opposed to quantity in these kind of YouTube things. So some of the benefits towards 4x5 large format photography is that it's quite a precise tool. 4x5 photography allows you that extra time because it is such a big and bulky piece of equipment. It allows you to set up your photo a lot more. Regardless of if you want to or not, you're going to be spending a lot more time setting up the camera than you are taking the photograph. So just keep that in mind. And I take that as a benefit just because I love to work with a very technical camera. That's definitely a bonus in my books. On top of this, the 4x5 camera, they offer a lot of movements in the front and rear systems, and these are usually found on monorail cameras. They're a really unique thing to large format photography. I do know that you can get a few tilt shift lenses for digital photography, but not to the level that these cameras can adjust. They offer rise and fall and tilt shift, swivel. I'm not sure of the correct terms, but they offer a lot of movement. The 4x5 and above offer just an incredible amount of detail. This right here is a 4x5 negative, and it's quite large. So it's 4x5 inches. I wouldn't say, to me personally, I'd make much use out of something larger than 4x5. The only larger thing that I probably do need it for is tintypes, but all of my film work I do with 4x5 format or lower. It offers amazing depth of field. Yeah, nothing that medium format or 35mm can offer. The bokeh that you can pull from these kinds of cameras is just crazy if you're into that kind of thing. And on top of that, you can really go quite technical and create everything in focus. One benefit that I usually use quite often is the ability to develop your photographs right after taking them. Although speed isn't usually mentioned in large format, I tend to differ with the fact that you can develop your images straight afterwards. Usually it takes me roughly a week or two to finish a roll of 35mm or medium format, whereas 4x5, you take an image and you're done. You can develop it straight away. It means that my workflow can speed up a lot more. I can see the image straight away and I can improve from there. I can review it, and if I don't like it, I can take another one. And another benefit is that it's a lot cheaper than any other large format. Some negatives about 4x5 is that it's large. This right here is my speed graphic, and it's actually the smallest 4x5 I own. You can't really get much smaller than that. You're going to need a big camera to house that 4x5 negative. There's usually a big lens involved as well, and then you often have bellows focusing systems as well. To accommodate all of that, you often need quite a heavy and large body, which sometimes can be distracting by your photographic process. It is expensive. Roughly a 10 pack of Portra 400 was $50 Australian. When you're looking at it, for 10 photographs, you're paying $50 plus developing costs, plus chemical cost, whatever you do. It does end up being quite expensive. So if you don't really have a big budget, I'd say jump onto a 35mm or medium format. I mean, I tend to pick up a lot of expired film, which does decrease the cost. It is also quite a slow system to shoot, and this is because of the technicality of the camera. It's quite big and heavy, as I mentioned before, so that means you've got to really set up the shot a heap beforehand, and it does mean that you're quite slow in shooting. It's not too great in some scenarios. If you're a wildlife shooter or a music festival shooter, I wouldn't suggest investing in a 4x5 large format camera unless you wanted to do some kind of experimental work, which is cool. I respect that. Because the 4x5 film is actually so big, it doesn't actually fit into a lot of tanks and things. So you often need to have some kind of adaptation so that you can actually develop this film. So all of that aside, some of my favorite scenarios to shoot this camera in is portraits, landscapes, nightscapes, still life, and then architecture as well. So some things needed. You'll need a 4x5 camera. It's probably the first piece of equipment people buy. I'd suggest looking for a speed graphic by Graflex if you've never shopped around for a 4x5 before. They're a great system, nice and compact and easy to use, and they've even got an inbuilt shutter as well. So you can actually stick on lenses that don't have any kind of shutters within them and use that. I know friends that use projector lenses, so you can really use anything and experiment, which is quite fun. The second thing you'll need is a lens, and on top of this you'll also need a lens board as well. And this is quite important because this just mounts the lens on the camera. I've actually made my own, and that was quite a fun little project I set out for myself. I didn't really want to wait too long to start shooting with my new camera, so I figured, look, I'll just build my own lens board. It's like a 2-day project. I went through many models of this thing just to refine it, and I'm quite happy with it today. You'll also need a shutter release, and this is quite important because there's such a heavy item. You don't really want to be finicking with the shutter, so I'd highly suggest grabbing a shutter release cable, just because I use it for 99% of my 4x5 photographs. You'll need some film holders, and this just holds the film in, like the name suggests, into the camera back. You change these out as you shoot, so one 4x5 film holder would hold 2. It's called a double dark, and it should come with a holder and then 2 slides that slide in and out. You'll need a loop. It's basically like a magnifying glass for your camera. I didn't use one for the first little while because I thought I could guess, but after some time I realized that some of my photographs were just a little bit out of focus. So I figured I'd grab a loop, and it's helped me out so much. I can just really pinpoint exactly what's in focus and what's not. You'll need a dark cloth so that you can actually see your image. The ground glass is quite dark, so often in brighter scenarios you can't really make out what your image is going to be. So yeah, I'd highly suggest that so that you can check out your composition and your focus so that you can make sure everything's perfect. And then last but not least, a tripod. I've taken a few photographs without a tripod by resting them on rocks and things, and probably about 50-50 the amount of times that I got it right and wrong. So I'd highly suggest getting a strong tripod. That's really important. Don't cheap out and get a $50 tripod. Get something that has quality because your camera is important. You don't want your camera slipping off and your lens falling, and you don't want your camera wobbling while you're taking photographs. So you do need quite a lot of items before taking a photograph with this thing, but yeah, throughout time I've just figured out that these things are always needed, and they always stay in my 4x5 bag. So photographing with this camera, there's a fair few steps involved. There's already quite a bit of equipment, but on top of this, you need to use the equipment well. So starting off, you need to load your film holders, and this needs to be done in complete darkness. So you need a dark bag or dark box or dark room, and it is quite tricky to do for the first time. I know that I've messed up a few times by loading it the wrong way and everything. I've thought about getting a tattoo telling me about how to load it, because often I look down at my arm and I'm like, oh, please remember. I often clean out my film holders before doing anything, so I can do this in complete brightness, and I just take out the 2 dark slides and then blow on it with my rocket blower. And this just removes any dust or anything to stop scratching on the negative when I'm loading it up. Then I put everything in the dark box, so I put my film and then my holder or holders. I close it up so it's completely light sealed. So I open up my film box, which has all of my negatives or positives, and I take them out. It's pretty easy once you've done it a few times. You can just feel where the film is, and then you take it out of the box and then just slide it underneath these 2 ridges of the film holder. Once it can't slide anymore, you shut the dark slide, and then I make sure that my film box is all closed up, and then I can open up my dark bag or dark box or whatever and switch on any lights. Next, I bring out my camera to wherever I need. The first thing I usually do is open up my lens. I just push a little lever, which opens up my lens completely. Then I like to set my composition, and this is really the crucial part of taking the photograph. So, you know, I focus, I compose, I test out the lighting and everything, and it's often quite drawn out because, again, the camera's quite slow and old, and really requires a lot of attention to detail. After I've done everything with the composition, then I make sure that I close up the lens. And this is crucial. I've messed up a lot of images before because I hadn't done this and wasted a lot of film in the process. So make sure you close up the lens before you put in your dark slide. So after closing up the shutter, then I like to test the shutter. So I often do a few exposures, just test it out on the required shutter speed. This is just to test out the shutter and make sure that there's no issues with it. Afterwards, then I can put my film holder in, take the dark slide out, and then take the photograph. Usually let my subject, if they're a person, know before I take the photograph. That's important because you don't really want to mess it up by having your model or your subject or whoever you're photographing not pay attention, because it is quite a long process. It's quite lengthy. So I always say 3, 2, 1, and then I fire the shutter. Then I put back the dark slide, and I've messed this up before by not doing this, and I've, in the process, wasted a lot of film. So it's just another little thing to remember every time you do it. Make sure you close up that dark slide. And then I make sure that I record my shot. I've got a little app for this, which I can basically set in all of my holders and which ones I've fired, which ones I haven't fired. It's important to document these holders because you don't always have a dark tent or a dark box or dark room handy to check out if you have got any film or not in these holders. So for developing later on, I use the Stim and Press SP445. There are many other alternatives, but this is the one that I use currently. It's great for black and white. I think that I could try a better system for color images, just because I need to constantly be rotating them every 15 or so seconds. So I think that I might have a look for something for my Jobo, but at the moment I'm using the Stim and Press SP445. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that the 4x5 camera doesn't really give off that film look that a lot of people are into these days with the super grainy, faded image, but I like the detail that I can pull from this. It really gives off a certain wow factor when you shoot with this. When people look at the camera, it's really cool to see their reactions when you pull up on a set or something. I've photographed on music videos and things, and I often like to get one great big photograph that encapsulates the music video. So really bringing it out and showing other people this niche kind of camera and system is really a cool way to photograph and to approach others. Looking through the ground glass is just exceptional. It's flipped upside down and it's the wrong way round, but it's quite a surreal experience photographing with this system. I think that the drawn out process really helps me enjoy the image a lot more. When I look at a photograph that I've made with 4x5 or others have made with 4x5 cameras or even larger, it really helps me appreciate the image a lot more, knowing how much care and detail has gone into the image and that everything that the photographer has set up is intentional. I just wanted to finish off by saying thanks very much for Nathan Hurdle. He's made this new sound for the YouTube channel, and he did so in such a lovely way. So I wanted to thank you very much. Definitely check out his tracks below. I'll link his SoundCloud to this video. And finally, I just wanted to say thanks very much for watching and being patient with the video. But yeah, if there's anything you'd like to see in the future, please let me know. Thanks very much. See you later.